refresh it. Make sure it went through. All right, go live. And it's going now. Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and his name is Willie, and he is a descendant from Holocaust survivors, and he's now an author of a book called Out from the Shadows. Did I get that right?
You did get it right. Way to
Sweet.
go.
So how are you doing today, Willie?
Uh, I'm doing well. All things considered, I'm here.
All things considered, huh? I'm sorry to hear that some things aren't going the best, the way that they could be going. But what is it that your book is actually about, real quick?
Well, and there's a whole backstory to that book too.
Of
So
course.
because it's the book I never wanted to write.
Oh,
So
that's good.
I'm actually, yeah, that I am I've been an author for, I've been writing books for the last 10 years, around
Mm-hmm.
there, maybe more, 12 years. So I have a number of fiction books out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not, they're novels. And it was kind of, I guess at the start of the pandemic, those
Mm.
darn pandemic projects.
Right.
So my wife tried to convince me that I should do a book about my family story. And
Mm. Interesting.
and I thought, no, my parents were Holocaust survivors, of course, as
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, and I'm going, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, and I said, I really don't know anything,
Mm.
because my parents, like many Holocaust survivors, did not really talk about their experience, especially my dad.
Oh yeah.
And for two reasons. One is
Mm-hmm.
they kind of want to spare their kids hearing these horrible things, and
Uh-huh.
though they do slip out from time to time. And the other reason is they don't want to. They're suffering from trauma, and
Mm-hmm.
they they rather kind of like leave it buried.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
I remember, I guess when I first started this,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a blog post with everything I know about my parents'
Uh-huh.
background. It was 1,800 words. That was it.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
short.
My wife kind of pushed me, and then I thought about it and tried to think of reasons why I should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is, if I didn't know the stories, then like nobody in the family knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why their story is they're just two of, I don't know, a million people survived, whatever, but their story
Mm-hmm.
is still important,
Yeah, yeah.
and important to the family. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
I would start working on it. And also, it was time there was a rising anti-Semitism, even
Mm.
before October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe it was just the right thing to do. So I kind of just went at it.
Okay.
And so that's the backstory, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, to the book.
what the book is about,
Yeah. Yeah, the backstory to the book. But what is the book about?
right? Is the book about? So the book
Uh-huh.
basically, I did incredible amount of research because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know a lot,
Yeah.
and I went to archives and databases, and
Oh boy.
I looked up all kinds. I read books,
Mm-hmm.
very like from historians
Mm-hmm.
and articles, and I started gathering information.
Yeah.
And so when I sat down to write, it's kind of into a few pieces. One is the history of my family, both my
Mm.
mother's family and
Mm-hmm.
my father's family. My father was from Poland. My
Uh-huh.
mother was from Romania.
Okay.
And then it was their experience during the war.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came at some point after the war, not until 1953, they came to Canada.
Huh.
And I was born in 1953. And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. It was better that I was born than not. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's about my childhood growing up.
Okay.
And then I talk, and then sort of the end of the book is a lot about intergenerational trauma, which
Okay.
I didn't really know I had until I actually
Hmm.
started writing the book.
Interesting. Interesting. How did you figure out that you had intergenerational trauma? Was it interviewing people? Was it sitting there reading
No,
anything and
no,
then you
no,
just go, "Oh, hey, that's me."
no. What happened was, I approached this like all my other books.
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely it was just dumb. And what I discovered was what happened is it was like writing it was transformational.
Hmm.
It really,
Interesting.
really, really was. And um, I uh, and how it would work was,
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed my siblings and other family members,
Oh.
and I tried to remember all these stories that I needed to have in the book and anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
And as these memories returned, all this trauma that I had locked up inside of me just got released. And
Ooh.
at some point, I literally fell apart.
Oh man. I am so sorry
like
to hear that.
like it was bad news.
Yeah.
And so I realized, wow, one day I I met with a therapist and she says, "Why are you here?" And I'm going, I think I have intergenerational trauma. And
how,
um,
how did
and
she handle that?
I've been what's that?
How did she handle hearing that intergenerational trauma? A lot of people don't even know what that is.
Well, this therapist actually sort of, it's one of her areas of specialty.
Oh,
I had
sweet.
looked her up,
Okay.
uh, so she does understand intergenerational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily not from Holocaust survivors. I think I was the first one that she actually ever um, worked with, but
Okay.
she had the experience and with trauma itself. So
Mm-hmm.
um, and I've been working with her ever since.
Oh.
So I'm actually much better now. I probably several years ago, I would not have been able to do this interview. I would have just fallen apart.
Oh man. Well, you look and sound amazing. So the work that you're doing with her is really working.
It really made a difference. It was not easy, and
No.
no, I quit probably about 3 times because I
Mm.
accused her of making me worse, and quickly came back because that's kind of part of the process. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
you're you probably have listeners who going nodding their heads as I speak.
Mm-hmm.
That as you're talking about all this stuff, more stuff comes out,
Yeah.
and you get worse and worse, and then eventually you
Level
start to
out.
crawl back out of that hole.
Mm.
And that's kind of where I was. So
Yeah.
what I learned was and the book pretty much lays out kind of like how all that trauma manifests itself. I
Uh-huh.
did an incredible job for decades bearing it. I literally built a brick wall around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I some of the traits that I had was I didn't trust people.
Uh-huh.
I didn't have any I very few people I allowed to get close to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when people read that that memoir, they were like shocked because
Oh wow.
there's so much in there they did not know about me. Even friends
Mm-hmm.
I've known for years,
Uh-huh.
decades, and
Mm.
so and so I was very distrustful of people. I
Mm-hmm.
had issues with attachment and abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that sort of manifests itself from my childhood, which you're probably going to say, what was your childhood like?
Well, I mean, if you had childhood trauma, then that obviously was what you buried, right? So how was your childhood?
And it's interesting because trauma is trauma. but
Mm-hmm.
there's different sources of trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You could be a victim of sexual violence or other forms of violence.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, it was, certain aspects of my childhood, but as well,
Mm-hmm.
I inherited stuff that was not due to my childhood,
Hmm.
which I can
Okay.
sort of get into a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
My childhood, my parents were, they came to this country with nothing. They
Mm-hmm.
came to Canada with absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, and they just started a new life and they worked real hard like every other immigrant, but
Mm-hmm.
they're also very traumatized. And
Yeah.
so their focus was on the basic necessities: housing,
Mm-hmm.
clothing, food,
Mm-hmm.
emotional support. No.
Oh man.
Um, I was so no one to help me with homework, no one to help me
Mm-hmm.
with problems with at school or with other people.
Mm-hmm.
No one take me to sports or anything like that. You grew up
Mm-hmm.
very quickly,
Yeah.
and so um, you have this sort of feeling of alienation alone. Your parents are very loving,
Mm-hmm.
but I sometimes refer to it as they were how do I say it? They were sort of clueless and useless, and
Oh.
not to say to me be mean to them, but
No.
they
No.
just
No.
weren't able to provide the kind of support. So
Mm-hmm.
you grow up very quickly, and you're kind of in a very young age in a survival mode,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's.
that's kind of how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of, I would call, I guess, a lot of social skills um, and just everyday kind of things that you needed to know, life
Mm-hmm.
skills. You, I had to learn them on my own.
Yeah. That's rough. That's
So it
really
was,
rough.
and it was not a happy household.
Mm. I'm sorry to hear that.
And uh, and so that was kind of like that was kind of where I came from. But as I got
Mm-hmm.
older, I kind of like just shut it all down and
Yeah.
kind of sort of went on with life and functioned very well. Actually, I shouldn't say relatively well. I functioned very well until I didn't.
Yeah, that is kind of how it usually goes for some people, right? They operate well with the traumas because they buried it, and then something usually comes along
Right.
and breaks the camel's back, so to say. So, what what kind of tipped the iceberg for you on that? Was it anything in particular? Was it a certain instance, or was it something that just culminated over a period of time over a certain subject?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because when people ask me that question, I just said it was just like as I remembered more and more.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not entirely true. As I think about it, there was a there was a moment that has just killed me, and I
Mm.
still carry that around. And what that was is my father lost his family in the war.
Mm.
He was married
Mm.
and had two kids, and they were murdered. And but he only told us. The weird thing was, he said that he was married and had one daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother even, they didn't meet until after the war. My mother,
Oh.
that's was her understanding as well.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I was really confused because he used to say, "Oh, my daughter, she was 4 years old when she died." So I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out when did she die and when was she born and when did she die,
Mm-hmm.
and I had all kinds of records and nothing was making sense.
Hmm.
And so I reached out and got in, and contacted a Polish archive where he
Mm-hmm.
was born,
Okay.
and I asked for marriage registration information so I'd know when he was married because I had no clue,
Mm-hmm.
and when his daughter was born. And
Uh-huh.
I came back with the marriage registration and his birth registrations for $2.
Oh wow.
And that
Huh.
was the moment where I fell apart.
Really?
And, and then suddenly I realized that all his grief that he
Mm-hmm.
carried around in his life was passed on to me.
Oh wow.
It was really heavy. Not only that,
Mm-hmm.
he used to say she was 4 years old when she was killed,
Mm-hmm.
and he was referring to the older daughter.
Uh-huh.
As it turns out, they were 11 months and 27 months. I actually found out when they were murdered.
Wow.
He
Wow.
did not, he probably didn't even know.
Yeah.
But I found it all out, and
Wow. That's really cool.
I still get triggered all the time
Mm.
on that one, and it's been difficult.
Yeah. I can imagine that's really difficult. I'm
And
sorry that
there were other things, but that was the big one.
yeah. That's
And,
really rough.
yeah, and I think as it seems, I took it harder than anyone else in the family. They were just kind of shocked, and I was just, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess it was partly because I had been spending months and months doing all
Mm.
this research, and this was not something I expected.
Yeah. And do you feel like there was a sense of betrayal there, or mistrust?
No,
No.
no,
Uh,
I
it was a train
my
of
father was so traumatized, he buried
mm,
the memory of his younger daughter.
yeah. So you actually picked up a trait for bearing trauma. You didn't necessarily just learn to do it. It was passed on to you
Yeah,
unknowingly
yeah,
and genetically,
obviously,
even. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. Oh,
And
sorry.
so, no, and so I mean, that's basically the journey I've been on for the last 5 years.
Boy.
And,
It.
and, and so what impact it had on me? As I said, it was transformational.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped writing fiction books, and
Ah.
I've sort of dedicated my life to community of descendants of survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did that was I realized, I never spoke to anybody about my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it as a kid. I avoided the topic, even as an adult. And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized so was everyone else.
Yeah.
There, and so it, everyone like me is walking around like on eggshells,
Mm-hmm.
afraid to even talk about their experiences and just keeping it all bottled up.
Yeah.
So I decided to write another book.
Ah.
And it will be called, because I'm only partway through the writing, it will be called
Okay.
The Hidden Victims.
Ooh.
Because they're all traumatized as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's all been passed down and what we call intergenerational trauma.
Yeah. And that's crazy to think that intergenerational trauma is being passed down like that unknowingly. And that ripple effect is huge because you had how many siblings?
Too.
Two. So that right there uh, can culminate in who knows how many more branches from your family tree, you know?
And as I was doing the research, I interviewed 98 people,
Mm-hmm.
both children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And I read I thought when I was doing my memoir, I thought
Mm-hmm.
I read somewhere that with each generation, it gets less
Mm.
pronounced or profound.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I found. I
Really?
found in many
Interesting.
cases the grandchildren were worse than their parents. They had more
Hmm.
trauma than their parents.
And that's interesting, and it kind of makes sense because trauma is more like a sticky ball or a snowball. And so if it goes downhill, it's just going to get more and more. So it takes active work to actually get rid of the trauma and either stop it
Right. That's
and.
exactly what I found. That I realized is that their parents
Mm-hmm.
didn't deal with their trauma and passed it on. But
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting is the third generation understands it much better and
Huh.
are much more open and vocal and are taking steps to make sure that it stops with them
Ooh.
and doesn't get passed on to their children.
Oh man. Becoming cycle breakers for the
Yeah.
better.
And that's part of the purpose that I'm writing the book is
Okay.
to get people, especially the second generation, to
Mm-hmm.
open up and talk more. And I'm hoping the book will be a catalyst to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
also to help families understand you have to break that um, that it's not a cycle, but that whole flow
Mm-hmm.
down from one generation to the other, because it is possible to do.
Yeah. And it's not easy work, and you should know about it because you're essentially breaking the cycle yourself, doing all the work that you're doing. And not only that, but you're pushing positive work back out into the world. So, I mean, in a sense, this work is a therapy for you, isn't it?
Um,
Kind of, sort of.
it's like a mission now, and
It's a
um,
purpose.
I provide a lot. Some of these people I provide a lot of support for are
Mm-hmm.
now out talking about trauma
Mm-hmm.
and speaking to people like you, but also in front of live groups as well, and talking about anti-Semitism, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't talk about inherited trauma without talking about where the trauma came from.
Yeah, exactly. And because, like you mentioned earlier, there's different forms of trauma. And just because it happened to, um, say, anyone or any certain group of people doesn't mean it can't happen again, right?
Right. And and what I realize as well, especially when I interview all these people, that many of them had different sources of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were abused,
Mm.
and uh, and what I realize is you can't separate what what traits came from which kind of trauma. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's just layered on top of each other, and so the more trauma you're exposed to, the worse you are. The other thing
Mm.
I realized as I was speaking to people is that who are the worst?
Mm-hmm.
People like me who had two parents who are
Mm.
Holocaust survivors as opposed to only one, which tends to suggest you're getting a double dose. It's like a vaccine. You're getting a double dose.
Uh-huh.
But also, there's not the the parent who can sort
Mm-hmm.
of moderate the impact of your childhood. So,
Yeah.
if one parent isn't a great, doesn't have the best parenting skills,
Mm-hmm.
then the other one,
Kind of
um,
picks up the slack.
yeah, pick up the slack, and that doesn't happen necessarily in a two Holocaust survivor household.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, it's not because they can't necessarily. It's more or less inexperienced and unknowledgeable. And that can be a big deal. So simply knowing about it and how to deal with it is really kind of the starting point, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and when I spoke to people about their childhood, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask about their parents' parenting skills, other
Mm-hmm.
things kind of jumped out at me.
Like what?
For, so not like um, people who survived the
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust, they either were able to get out of Europe,
Ah.
um, and right before it was too late, and
Mm-hmm.
or they went into hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to a lot. I did not realize how many people actually, their parents actually, how many Holocaust survivors actually were in hiding. And many of them were children.
Mm.
And, or the teenagers would go into the woods and join sort of partisans
Mm.
and sort of, and become almost like guerrillas, like
Uh-huh.
guerrilla fighters.
Yeah.
And so they all had different kinds of experience.
Mm.
And so a lot of the people who were hidden were children. They were
Mm.
hidden in like in religious orders or some, or sometimes just with uh, you know Gentile people,
Mm-hmm.
farms, all kinds of stuff. But what happens is, you're 10 years old and you're separated from your parents.
Mm-hmm.
So and you're not in school and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have any friends anymore. And what
Nope.
happens is their social development is frozen in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's
so
rough.
so I'm talking to these people, and they said, growing up, I felt like I was the parent.
Mm.
So it kind of there was a lot of role reversal, and
Interesting.
others, when do you learn to cook?
Mm-hmm.
You learn to cook in your teenage years, but if you're in the middle of a war, you're not learning how to cook. You're just learning to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, some people didn't have domestic skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they didn't have, their education was stopped, their social development stopped, all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things were stopped, and they lost families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's like one of the observations I found. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so many, some people had very, very had happy childhood because
Mm-hmm.
their parents were able to bury it and just kind of keep it out of sight.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But that didn't
but
necessarily stop the trauma from actually building on, though, eventually.
no, it was still passed on,
Yeah.
right? It was still passed on. That's the thing is that, they would tell, oh, and then I start asking them questions, and it would all start to come out.
Mm.
I have to tell you, doing those interviews was incredibly triggering. It was
Oh, I can imagine.
it was not easy to do.
Mm-mm.
And
Uh,
I had my wife was begging me to stop.
oh, man.
My therapist was suggesting maybe you should like cool off a little bit, and I just decided I need to get through them all.
Yeah. That's,
So they were not easy. These stories were not easy to listen to. I had
mm-mm.
people who cried right through the entire interview.
Wow. Yeah.
It
I
was
mean,
just,
with so much trauma, I can't imagine someone not necessarily crying.
I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm a writer.
Mm. Yeah, and so
And
that kind of
yeah,
puts
I'm
you.
known. What do I know about mental health? Other than I have problems with my own mental health.
Yeah, and so you're kind of in an awkward position of getting these people's stories in their most vulnerable parts of them too, and having to sit there and kind of comfort them. But I'd say that them. Did you let them know you went through similar things, that you had parents that were also survivors?
There was that's right. So I had this standard thing that I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. I wrote this memoir, and now I'm following it up with this book about intergenerational trauma, blah blah blah.
Mm.
And I would thank them for trusting me to tell their story, and they
Mm.
would say, "Well, you're one of us.
Oh,
Why wouldn't I?" And so there was
that's awesome.
a lot of people, to be honest, a lot of people
Mm.
kind of reached and they sort of connected with me.
Yeah.
I'm friends with some of these people now, in fact, but it was an extremely difficult process. I would not want to do again.
I can imagine. It seems like a lot of the really good things in life are really difficult to get to. And even though we can enjoy the fruits of the labor, we don't want to do the labor again. And there's
No,
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
no.
wrong with that.
So Mike, I'm really excited about finishing this book.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people waiting, waiting to read it. So in the meantime, I'm working away, and but my memoir has done very, very well because um, people sort of picked up there's a lot of stuff in there about trauma as well.
Oh.
And so many, there are people who, I think there are people who kind of fall into several groups.
Mm-hmm.
People who know me going, oh, I didn't know you had all these issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are people who basically did not know me,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of identify with my story because they've had their own experiences.
Yeah.
And then there were people who, most of them were not Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
who read the stories in there and were in shock,
Mm.
absolute shock. Had no. They basically, uh, the book is how I should know how to describe it, but the book is I tell in the first part of the book. I
Mm-hmm.
tell the story of the Holocaust,
Okay.
and not a lot of detail, but enough detail.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of research, especially the regions where my parents came from, and then
Yeah.
I placed my family in the story. And so
Oh.
you learn about the Holocaust and how it impacted on my family as
Mm-hmm.
you're reading the book. And it's
Huh.
actually a very compelling read.
That's a very interesting take on that because a lot of the time it's just firsthand accounts, but you're actually taking the historical accounts and mixing it with what account you have from your family.
Right. And so the whole story of the Holocaust ends up being sort of, I mean, this is the way the book is very well constructed in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole story of the Holocaust feeds into um, my childhood because all those things that happened directly impacted on myself and my
Mm-hmm.
siblings.
Yeah.
And so that's where people are going, aha, wow,
Mm.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And so the other I guess I should mention is
Okay.
there were a lot of things I didn't like about my father. He was a
Mm.
difficult, complex man, and
Mm-hmm.
it sort of comes out in the book. I remember one person who left a review said, the author's father sounds like a horrible person. Well, he wasn't a horrible
Mm.
person. He was
Yeah.
a damaged person.
Ooh,
But
yeah.
but he frustrated me to no end.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after I wrote the book,
Mm-hmm.
I see my parents, and they were embarrassing too, because they were
Mm.
immigrants, and
Mm.
they weren't just ordinary. They were damaged immigrants on top of it.
Yeah.
And now I look back, and I see them in an entirely different light. That
That's good.
they were heroic. That they were able to push aside horrible horrible events that they experienced and go on
Mm-hmm.
to live semi-normal lives and raise a family, and that, considering, is heroic. And I my only regret is never telling them that.
Oh. And that's really good that you were able to have your views change like that, and I'm sure that they know that you feel that way now. You
Well,
know.
I was not exactly mean to them,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think they probably did not really know how I felt.
You know,
So,
I think a lot of parents and their children have that kind of disconnect. You know, and I think that the child never really fully understands the amount of love and the extent of love that the parents gave and what they could do, you know, while they're around. I think it's a little after the fact. Or it takes a lot of trauma in other areas to make someone realize something about their parents. Myself, for example, I didn't realize my parents were heroes in their own right until I was in rehab myself, you know?
there you
And
go.
It's changed my outlook on a lot of things. So I can imagine that having your parents change in your mind just changed everything else too.
And and they were very loving,
Mm-hmm.
but they, as I said, at times they were like useless and clueless,
Well, like you
and
said,
it
they were
was not it's
damaged.
not their fault.
Yeah, they were damaged.
And but I was, there were times I was like annoyed, disappointed, pissed off,
Mm.
because I wanted to grow up like other kids,
Yeah.
and I knew I was different,
Hmm.
and but and at times you try and distance yourself from your parents because
Mm-hmm.
you want to be like every other Canadian kid.
Yeah. Eh, it's just natural to be part of a community, part of a group.
So
And
now I have a new community. It's other
yeah,
damaged people like me.
yeah, but it's not only just that, but y'all are cycle breakers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And y'all need help from each other. Y'all need support. Y'all need all of that. And who better to lead the way than someone that's doing it themselves?
And
So,
so I have like all kinds of projects have boiling away in my head when I finish this book.
oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, because I'll keep working on new stuff until I
Hmm.
drop dead.
That's good.
That's what I figure.
So real quick for everyone out there listening, what websites do you got?
Okay, so I do have a website. It's
Okay.
williehandler.com,
Okay.
WILLIEHANDLER.
Okay.
And there's a blog there, but I've also now migrated to Substack,
Oh,
which is where
okay.
all the writers are going.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's true, huh?
so if you look for if people are on Substack or they're interested, because there are lots of I write a lot of interesting posts on all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of topics on
Okay.
Substack while I'm writing my book, and so they can find me there. My books are on Amazon,
Okay.
but they'll probably be most interested. My other books are very, very good, but they're funny books. And if you want to have a good cry, you read my memoir.
Is it my personal journey to inner peace on Substack?
No, it is called what? My account is called. I think it's called A Jew in the Wilderness.
Oh, I just found the
A
book.
Jew lost in the wilderness.
Oh, found it. Okay. Let me get that put on screen for everyone real quick. All right.
And
Whoop.
there you
And
almost there.
there we go.
And there's some very interesting stuff there.
Okay. Cool.
A little
Well,
bit
we'll.
of everything. Sample of my writing style.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very succinct style, so
Oh,
it's very easy. Stuff is very easy to read.
cool. Well, everyone be sure to check that out. It's going to be interesting keeping track of his progress as he works on more books.
And and again, since this is about mental health,
Mm-hmm.
I repeat, I would not be here
Mm.
if I did not eventually relent and go to therapy. I could
Yeah.
not be talking about this stuff. I could
Mm-hmm.
not be working on this next book without the help of my therapist, who I so I'm so attached to her that if anything happens to her, I'm going with her,
Yeah. I think I know how that goes. I have a
right?
good relationship with my
And
therapist as well.
I know I along the way I've met a lot of people who've had not very good therapists,
Mm-hmm.
and or their therapist just didn't help them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate because this is my first therapist.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that in itself is incredible.
Yeah, most people
Because
go
the
through
stories I
those
hear,
things.
people are hopping around until they finally find the right one.
Hmm.
And I just, but by chance, found the right one right off the bat.
That's really
No, I
cool.
did quit 3 times.
Yeah, because you felt like you were getting worse.
Oh, I, I was mad at her.
Yeah, and I mean
and
that.
and being the real professional that she was, she was
Uh,
just she would just take, and like there was a couple times where I was yelling at her, and she just sat there and she just took it. And then the next session I would apologize, and she says, "No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize." I said, "No, I do have to apologize."
I think that that happens to a therapist more often than not.
Oh
They'll.
yes, I'm sure. Oh, I realize that. But I told her, that's not who I am.
Hmm.
And so we have actually a very, very good relationship.
And he disappeared.
Therapists keep looking. They're out there.
Yep, they are definitely out there. You just have to look.
Yeah.
And
And
a lot of it
it's
comes from
it's a hit and
asking.
miss.
It's
Because
about asking the
I
right
could
questions.
recommend my person to you,
Hmm.
and she might not help you because
Nope.
it's all about it's about whether or not you connect or not.
Yeah, it really is. And about that, figuring out if you're going to connect or not is about asking the right questions, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just do a Google search necessarily and be like, all right, I found spot number three, and I'm going to call them, and they're going to be my therapist for the rest of my life. Nope, you got to interview them while you're there.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a messy process, and they have to also be taking on new clients. You can only
yep.
see so many people. So I
Yep.
remember she was not the first person I approached. The
Hmm.
first the first couple of people I approached um, couldn't take on anybody new.
Nah.
So
So it was actually a blessing in disguise, right? Because who knows, you may have not actually wound up with the
right,
one that you got. So,
who knows where I would end up?
and then who knows, maybe
But
the book
but
wouldn't have even been written.
that's kind of how life works, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
You never know which way it's going to go.
I
And sorry.
I don't make too many long range plans. I just worry about what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And
And worrying about what you do today is, I mean, sometimes all that you really can do at once, right?
yeah.
Uh, how do you like to handle with your trauma nowadays? What are some of your go-to steps that you deal with your intergenerational trauma?
I have a list here
Oh,
somewhere
okay,
I have a list here of things I I can do.
okay.
Let me I'm gonna just pull it up real quick. Oh, okay, it's called my game plan for triggers.
My game plan for triggers. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, I think there's seven here.
Gotcha.
Everybody taking notes? Um, Remind myself this will pass in time. I've come out of these moments before.
Uh,
It's not the
that's a
most
good one.
effective way, but it's kind of part of it is reminding yourself this has happened before. I've come
Hmm.
out of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
Oh, letting my wife know that I've been triggered because I sometimes don't tell her, and and tell her to turn off the news because
Oh
nothing
yeah.
worse. There's nothing worse these days than watching the news, right?
No, not at all. Well, a few
Okay,
things, but definitely
not
upon the
very
list.
few. Maybe like heroin.
Yeah.
But heroin, at least you would feel good.
Yeah.
3, limit the amount of time um, on social media.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right,
Uh,
it is because it's like the news sometimes.
yeah.
Spending time with grandchildren and animals. I didn't put in
Ooh.
the animals. I don't know what. I found a dead rabbit on my front porch this morning. I don't think that's what she had in mind.
No, probably should be
No.
alive.
Walking in nature in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
trying to visual, or at least trying to visualize doing that.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Exercising 5 to 10 minutes to get your heart rate up,
Uh huh.
um, because that will help you come out.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I put together a trigger playlist on Spotify.
Trigger playlist, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Oh,
cool.
there's one more.
Ooh, so 8.
Oh, there's more. No. Oh, no. Wow. There's more here? Oh, right. Oh, frozen washcloth or ice cubes on your face for about 10 seconds and deep breathing because it's kind of like a physical shock.
Ah, yeah.
These are
That's a pretty
good.
good one.
Hot bath or sauna.
Ooh, yeah.
Smells. So,
Mm-hmm.
kind of smells that are like hot bread or
Coffee.
eucalyptus if it's something you like.
Uh-huh.
Look at photos of my grandkids.
Mm.
Um, excuse me.
Mm.
What does this say? When notice when it lifts or feels better, and take positive moments or thoughts in which some butterfly hugs. So you kind of like hug yourself, things like that. So that's
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 really
my.
good.
Oh, there's more here. Look at I have. It's such a long list. I haven't even finished going through it.
Oh,
Say out
wow.
loud if possible, or in your head. I lovingly and wholeheartedly accept myself even when I can't think of anything else. Whatever that
Nice.
means. So that's my trigger list, and and depending on where I'm at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
I'll use one of those things. Uh, Going out for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's like a sort of like woods not far from me, and
Uh-huh.
so going through a walk is um, so relaxing. It's kind of you
Mm-hmm.
feel you're away from everything. So
Yep.
that's really, really effective. But if
Yeah.
it's pouring rain, you might not want to do that.
Or at
So
least
you
bring
go
an
to something
umbrella.
else. But that gives you sort of an idea.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so those are the kind of things. It's a long list, and you kind of you do what works best for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you have more than 7 things to do whenever you
No,
have.
there's 11 or 12 or something. Maybe there was more.
Well,
I
I
never
mean,
got to the bottom of the list.
I don't think a list like that could ever really be 100% done. Do you? Because
No, no.
as you dig up traumas, you just find more, and then I think honestly, some traumas never really get fully healed all the way. Do you think they do?
Trauma
Yeah,
never gets healed.
never gets healed.
You can't get healed from trauma, but you learn to manage it.
Manage trauma,
You
not
can't
heal.
stop getting triggered.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been taught is, well,
Mm-hmm.
here's a whole list of things you can do if you are triggered. And so
Ah.
that's managing it. So instead of going into a funk for 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe I can pull myself out in a couple hours.
Yeah. There you go.
And
And
so that's is that healing? Not really, but it's some conditions are chronic. I
mm-hmm.
have chronic physical issues as well, not
Oh.
just mental health, and you learn to adapt
Mm-hmm.
and live with them and mitigate whatever negative impact it has on you.
Yeah. This is true. I do have some physical ailments myself, and so
Yeah,
it does correlate back to the same thing because our nervous system is part of our body.
right.
So I guess once it
And
is
how many physical conditions are triggered by stress? Lots,
a lot, yeah,
lot of stuff.
a lot, a lot.
So my therapist will be very proud that I read out her list on a podcast.
Yep, and you'll be able to even show her the whole episode and everything too.
Oh, you know what? I sent her links to episodes.
That's good. I hope she
She she
listens to
like
them.
she likes listening to them. It's kind of weird.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily weird because you're diving into deeper stuff with her than you are with us. But I mean, it would be kind of a different. persona of yours that is being exposed to
Oh, she's
her.
seen every side of me.
Well, there you go. So
And
it can't be
she's
that
seen
much
every
weirder.
side.
It can't be that much weirder. You'll get used to it. Have you gotten used to the sound of your own voice yet?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've done a whole bunch of podcasts. Um,
Mm,
it's just to get my story out,
yeah.
and also you never know who you're helping.
No, you don't.
You know, I was on one pod. I haven't been on 100 or anything like that, but I was on one podcast,
Hmm.
and the host passed on an email that he
Hmm.
received from somebody who listened to it, who said it was life changing for him.
Oh, wow.
And I feel great about that,
That's awesome.
right? That it
Yeah.
is awesome, and I'm thinking, well, then then they're worth doing.
Oh, yeah.
If you can touch people like that and make
Hmm.
a difference in their lives, and that's part of what this next book that I'm writing about. That's why
Oh,
I'm writing it, to make a difference.
to make a
Oh,
difference.
somebody I interviewed
Uh huh.
sent me this mug. Can you
Oh,
see what it says?
difference maker.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
which I thought was very, very sweet.
Oh, sorry. I had a little burp.
That's okay.
Yeah. That's an
You'll edit it
awesome mug.
out.
Yes, I will. Let me mark that real quick, actually. There we go. uh, it's awesome that you're making impacts in people's lives, and you don't even know that you're necessarily doing it either. You
No,
are uh, actively going out there and publishing things to make people's lives better. But that's kind of the thing is that you're not going out there for the expectation of fan mail necessarily, right?
no. I get it though. I
Which
actually
is
do
good.
get some. Oh yeah. People reach out to me all the time.
Which is super good because that gives you outside support, outside validation, which helps provide purpose. You know.
I had two whole sessions of therapy on this because it used to make me very uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and and I eventually sort of talked my way through it all. But I used to not like, I did not. I felt very uncomfortable getting praise, and
Mm.
it's kind of part of my trauma.
Yep.
And I kind of eventually worked through it, and so now I'm fine with it.
That's
Do
good.
I need it? Do I need the validation? No, I've never have.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I am. I know, I decide what I'm doing is right, and I just do
Mm-hmm.
it.
That's awesome. That's a really good way to live life. So long as you're not hurting anyone in the process, right?
Well, yeah, if I get negative feedback, then hey, I'm the first one that if I've done something wrong, I will fix it.
There you go. And that
So
is accountability, and accountability means a lot.
it does. It really does.
Um, so, with that being said, we are nearing the end of this episode, but we can hopefully look to see you in the future, correct?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. 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 I think um, if down the road when the next book is out,
Yes.
you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in talking about that in more detail,
Yep.
we spoke a little bit about it.
Yep.
Um, I'd be happy to return.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on. I'd love to catch up with you and see what all little bits of information you've picked up along the way and what other experiences you may have had and what
Oh
other
yeah.
triggers
There's
you've.
this whole thing on siblings that,
Ooh.
oh my God, that I just had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
And now I have psychologists sending me papers.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
Well, you
because
can tell us.
there are therapists out there who know I'm doing this work.
Oh, wow. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, maybe I should get you in touch with my therapist. Hmm.
really?
Yeah, that would be interesting. Maybe my therapist knows a little bit about you. Who knows? Maybe I'll have to ask.
Right.
That'd be interesting.
Okay.
Um,
Well, it was nice meeting you, Keegan. And
oh, yeah, we are
right.
right at the end. So before we go, do you have anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Uh, I think I kind of said it,
You kind of said it
right?
all.
Like,
Yeah.
right? I think I said it all. I mean, I think it's very important for people to um, get help if they're struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and don't give up.
Yep.
And there, I was, I kept, I remember having this conversation over and over again that I'm never going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept being told by all kinds of people, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's
Uh-huh.
true.
Yeah.
So keep it up. And I may as well one more time plug my book, which is
Okay.
because it's actually, it's really an important book
It
for
is.
many reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
the $2 I make on each sale isn't going to make me rich. So it's out from the shadows,
Okay.
growing up with Holocaust survivor parents, and
Awesome.
you'll learn a lot about trauma in there.
Sweet. Well, everyone, be sure to check that out. And you can Google that, but you can also find links to that book on retrievingsanity.com once his guest profile is up. And you can also find that link in the episode description on YouTube and Spotify. And hey, I got one question for you though. Do you
Yeah.
know a little number that someone can call whenever they are having a mental crisis of some sorts?
In Canada, I do.
Oh, there's a Canada number. That's right.
Okay, because I have used it. I'm trying to
Oh,
find it.
oh
Hang on.
man. Okay.
Hang on. Um, hang on.
I wonder if it's the same as ours. Because
It's from
ours
my
is.
therapist. Let me find. All I have to do is find an email from her because it's always at the bottom of her emails.
Okay.
Um, and I just have to remember what her name is. Okay, and uh, oh, yeah, 24/7 crisis line 188. Oh, sorry, 1844 HERE 247.
Awesome. So that is.
And there's more. She's giving me a few of them.
Yep.
Suicide and crisis hotline Canada wide,
Ooh.
1-800-448-3000.
That's awesome. So that is the Canada hotline, and the American hotline is 988. So anyone out,
Okay.
yeah, anyone out there listening, if y'all have any kind of mental crisis going on, give that number a call because they will help you, and they want to help.
I've had the opportunity where I've used it, so
And it's a
um,
very valuable resource
yeah.
because without it, we may not have you around, right?
Uh,
It's a mental
who
crisis.
knows? Who
You wouldn't
knows?
you wouldn't be you where you're at, right?
Right. Right.
So
I remember telling my therapist, and she told me how proud she was that I used that I called. So
yeah, that's a
I
big
guess
deal.
it is. For some people it's hard, but for me, it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Well, I'm really glad that you did it because I got to hear your story. So many other people are going to be able to hear your story and hear other people's stories, and because of that, other people are going to be able to start managing and healing and breaking cycles. So, Willie, I've got to thank you for being on the show. It has been a pleasure and an honor. And again, everyone, be sure to check out the book Out from the Shadows: Growing Up with Holocaust Survivors and Holocaust Survivor Parents. There we go. um, but with that being said, we have come to the end of this episode. So, Willie, do you have any last words?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. All right. Everyone, you have a wonderful day, evening, whenever it is that you're listening to this recording. And everyone out there listening right now, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening on WDJY 99.1 FM. This is Keegan. Y'all have a good one. Shalom. And stop.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you. So, and how long does it take you to put this